What if your garden could do most of the work for you? Not because you spend a fortune on plants every spring, not because you have hours to spare on weekends, but because you made the right choices once and nature took over from there. That is exactly what self-seeding plants do. They bloom, they drop their seeds, they go quiet through winter, and then they come back, fuller, stronger, more beautiful than the year before. And they keep doing it season after season without you replanting a single thing. Welcome to Cottage, where we help you build a smarter, more beautiful garden with less effort. Today we are walking through 13 of the best self-seeding plants you can get into the ground this June. Some are dramatic and tall, some are soft and delicate, some are medicinal, some are magnets for butterflies and bees, but every single one of them shares one incredible quality. Once you plant them, they come back forever. Let's get into it. Plant 1. Lupins Lupinus polyphyllus. We are starting with one of the most jaw-dropping plants on this entire list, the lupin. If you have ever seen a garden full of lupins in late spring, you know exactly what I mean. Those tall, tightly packed flower spikes in deep purples, electric blues, soft pinks, rich reds, and clean whites, they are impossible to ignore. Bumblebees absolutely love them, and once a lupin colony gets established, it fills a space with color and height that almost nothing else can match. Lupinus polyphyllus is native to the Pacific coast of North America, growing wild from California all the way north through British Columbia in mountain meadows and along cool stream edges. Native American peoples of the Pacific Northwest used lupin seeds as food after processing to remove their bitter alkaloids and used the roots medicinally. But the lupins we grow in our gardens today are something special. The Russell hybrids, developed by an English nurseryman named George Russell, who spent decades patiently selecting and crossing plants in his Yorkshire garden beginning in 1911. When he finally unveiled his new varieties at the 1937 Chelsea Flower Show, they caused a sensation and won every major award. The modern lupin as we know it was born in that moment. What makes lupins especially remarkable is what they do to your soil. Research has confirmed that lupins are nitrogen-fixing plants. They form symbiotic relationships with rhizobium bacteria in the soil, converting atmospheric nitrogen into a plant-available form that actually improves fertility for every surrounding plant over time. You are not just growing beautiful flowers, you are feeding your soil. The flower structure is also specifically adapted to bumblebee pollination through a mechanism that requires the weight of the bee to expose the pollen-bearing surfaces. Studies have documented that lupin flowers provide essential food for bumblebee queens emerging in spring, when very little else is in bloom, and that protein source is absolutely critical. Plant lupins in full sun to part shade in well-drained, slightly acidic soil in USDA zones 4 through 8. They prefer cool, moist climates and do best in the northern half of the country and at higher elevations in the south. June planting gives young plants the time to establish deep root systems before winter. Lightly scarify the seeds with sandpaper before sowing, just a gentle scuff across the seed coat, to significantly improve germination rates. For self-seeding, allow the pods to dry on the plant completely. When they are ready, the pods snap open and scatter seeds forcefully around the parent plant. Leave them to do it naturally. Once established, a lupin colony expands gradually and asks for virtually nothing from you. Just step back and let it grow. Plant 2. Sweet William Dianthus barbatus. Next, something a little more delicate but just as reliable, Sweet William. Those flat-topped clusters of intricately patterned flowers in white, pink, red, and bicolor fill the late spring garden with some of the most beautiful markings in the entire plant world. And the fragrance, particularly in the evening, is something else entirely. Plant Sweet William near a garden seat or along a path and you will appreciate it every single time you walk past. Dianthus barbatus is native to southern Europe, growing wild in the Pyrenees and the southern Alps. It has been cultivated in European gardens since at least the 16th century, appearing in detailed botanical illustrations from the 1500s and described by John Gerard in his famous 1597 herbal. Early American colonists introduced it to the New World in the 17th and 18th centuries, and it became a fixture of cottage gardens across the continent through the 19th century. Research has confirmed that Sweet William produces seeds with natural germination rates typically above 80% when surface sown in late summer or early autumn with good soil contact, which is exactly what happens when it self-seeds. That high germination rate is the reason it returns so reliably year after year with no help from you. Studies have also documented that its flowers are particularly valuable for daytime flying moths, butterflies, and hoverflies, providing significant nectar resources in the late spring window when many early bloomers have finished and summer plants have not yet begun. That gap-filling role in the pollinator calendar is genuinely important. Plant Sweet William in full sun to part shade and well-drained average soil in USDA zones 3 through 9. June planting produces first-year rosettes that overwinter easily and bloom the following May and June, establishing the perpetual self-seeding cycle from year 2 onward. Allow seed heads to dry and scatter naturally through summer. You will see small rosettes appearing in late summer and autumn. Those are your plants for next year. Leave them where they are. Come spring, they will bloom beautifully right on cue. The evening fragrance makes Sweet William one of the best choices for planting near anywhere you sit and relax outdoors. It earns its place on this list not just through its self-seeding reliability but through pure sensory pleasure. Plant 3 Bronze Fennel Funiculum vulgare purpureum. Here is one that experienced gardeners always seem to have, and that beginners almost always overlook: bronze fennel. The foliage alone is worth growing it for. Those hazy, feathery clouds of bronze-purple leaves catch the light in a way that almost no other plant can. Set it at the back of a border where the afternoon sun can shine through it and it looks absolutely magical. Then in summer, flat-topped clusters of tiny yellow flowers appear, and this is where things get interesting for the whole garden ecosystem. Funiculum vulgare has been cultivated across the Mediterranean since ancient times. Ancient Greeks and Romans used fennel extensively as a flavoring, a digestive aid, and a treatment for eye complaints. Marathon, the site of the famous 490 BCE battle between the Greeks and Persians, takes its name from the Greek word for fennel, marathos, because the battlefield was covered in wild fennel plants when the battle was fought. Fennel arrived in North American gardens with early European settlers and naturalized so extensively in California that it is now considered invasive along the coast, which tells you something about just how vigorous a self-seeder it truly is. Research from the Royal Horticultural Society has documented that fennel flowers attract more insect species than virtually any other commonly grown garden plant, with surveys recording over 150 different insect species visiting fennel flowers in a single growing season. That is an extraordinary number. And fennel is also the exclusive larval food plant for both the black swallowtail and the anise swallowtail butterflies across North America, 2 species that cannot complete their life cycle without it. Plant bronze fennel in full sun and well-drained average soil in USDA zones 4 through 9. June planting produces large impressive plants by autumn that self-seed freely after flowering. Remove excess seedlings in spring because fennel can become overwhelming in smaller gardens. A single plant can produce an enormous number of offspring. The plants reach 5 to 6 feet tall and pair beautifully with roses, ornamental grasses, and late-blooming perennials. One important note: keep fennel well away from dill in the vegetable garden. They cross-pollinate readily and the resulting seedlings lose the distinctive character of both. Plant 4 Columbine Aquilegia spp. Moving into the truly enchanting Columbine or Aquilegia. If you want a plant that transforms your garden with color while also keeping things interesting by producing slightly different flowers every year, this is it. Those intricate spurred blooms in every shade from deep royal purple to the softest pale yellow are genuinely unlike anything else in the spring garden. But here's what makes self-seeded columbines especially fascinating: they naturally cross-pollinate with each other and produce seedlings that are genetically different from their parents. So your garden never looks exactly the same 2 years running. New color combinations appear that you never planned for and couldn't have chosen. It is one of the most joyful forms of garden surprise. Native columbine species grow wild across North America, Europe, and Asia, with dozens of distinct species documented across the continent. Native American peoples use columbine roots medicinally and the flowers as a food garnish. Thomas Jefferson grew columbines in the flower beds at Monticello. European plant breeders developed the large-flowered hybrid varieties through the 18th and 19th centuries that now dominate American gardens. Research from Colorado State University confirmed that columbine populations naturally cross-pollinate and produce genetically diverse seedlings, explaining why self-seeded plants so frequently differ in color from their parents. Studies have also documented that the long nectar spurs are specifically adapted to attract hummingbirds and hawk moths in spring, providing a food source for long-tongued pollinators at a time when very few other plants can reach them. Plant columbines in part shade to full sun in well-drained, humus-rich soil in USDA zones 3 through 8. June planting lets the plants root in before summer heat, though columbines prefer cooler weather and may go partly dormant in extreme heat before rebounding strongly in autumn. The key rule for self-seeding: do not deadhead. Allow the papery seed pods to dry completely on the plant until they split and scatter naturally, typically through July and August. Seedlings appear in autumn or the following spring and should be left undisturbed until they are at least 3 inches tall before thinning or moving. Plant 5, Viola/Johnny Jump-Up, Viola tricolor. Next on the list, and possibly the most enthusiastic self-seeder of all 13, the Johnny Jump-Up or Viola. Those small but intensely vivid purple, yellow, and white pansy-like flowers appear from early spring all the way through summer. They pop up between paving stones at the base of walls, in gravel paths, along the edges of borders. Wherever they find a spot they like, they appear. And they keep appearing. Once you have Johnny Jump-Ups in your garden, you will always have them. Viola tricolor is native across Europe and Western Asia, growing wild in meadows, cultivated fields, and roadsides from Ireland to the Caucasus. It appears in Greek and Roman botanical writings, throughout medieval herbals as a treatment for skin conditions and respiratory complaints, and famously in Shakespeare's A Midsummer Night's Dream, where Oberon uses the juice of the wild pansy to induce love. Early European settlers brought it to North America as both an ornamental and a folk remedy for childhood skin complaints. What makes this plant's self-seeding mechanism so effective is something called ballotery. The drying seed capsule literally snaps open with enough force to scatter seeds up to 4 feet from the parent plant. Research has documented this mechanism in detail. It is not passive seed dropping. The plant actively throws its seeds. That is why Johnny Jump-Ups appear in places you never planted them and why they fill spaces with such speed. Studies have also confirmed that viola flowers are important early-season food sources for bumblebee queens emerging from hibernation in spring, providing critical nectar before most other plants are in bloom. Plant violas impart shade to full sun in well-drained average soil in USDA zones 3 through 9. June planting establishes plants that bloom through summer and drop seeds in late summer and autumn, returning as seedlings the following spring. They prefer cooler weather and self-seed most effectively in dappled shade where the soil stays evenly moist. Once established, do nothing. Just let them go wherever they choose. Plant 6, Black-Eyed Susan, Rudbeckia hirta. Now we move into something bolder, Black-Eyed Susan. Bright golden yellow flowers with those distinctive dark chocolate centers. They bloom from midsummer through autumn when a lot of the garden is starting to wind down, and they do it with complete reliability, year after year, dropping thousands of seeds per plant and returning thicker and more abundant every single season. This is one of the great workhorses of the self-seeding garden. Rudbeckia hirta is native to the central and eastern United States, where it colonized prairies, roadsides, and open meadows across vast areas before European settlement. Native American tribes, including the Cherokee, used it medicinally, making infusions from the roots to treat colds and earaches and applying poultices to snake bites and swellings. It became widely planted in European gardens after colonial-era explorers brought it back across the Atlantic, and it holds the honor of being the state flower of Maryland. Research from university extension programs across the Midwest confirms that Black-Eyed Susan seeds have very high germination rates when they fall naturally onto bare or lightly disturbed soil and experience natural winter cold stratification. Studies have documented that its flowers are among the most valuable native plants for supporting native bee populations, with over 40 bee species recorded visiting a single planting. That is a significant contribution to your local ecosystem. Plant Black-Eyed Susans in full sun and well-drained average soil in USDA zones 3 through 9. June planting allows the plants to establish before summer heat and produce their first seed crop by autumn. The most important thing to remember: allow spent flower heads to remain through winter rather than cutting them down. The seeds feed birds through the cold months and then fall naturally onto soil for spring germination. Thin emerging seedlings in spring to 12 to 18 inches apart where they come up too densely. Within a few seasons, a single plant becomes a colony. Let it happen. Plant 7, Feverfew Tanacetum parthenium. Halfway through our list now, and this next one is a plant that experienced gardeners always have but rarely talk about enough: feverfew. Dozens of small white daisy-like flowers with cheerful yellow centers from late spring through summer. Bright feathery green foliage with a distinctive sharp herbal scent. It self-seeds with tremendous enthusiasm once established. A single plant can produce dozens of offspring within 2 seasons, and it spreads gently and naturally across borders in a way that always looks intentional, even when it wasn't. Feverfew is native to southeastern Europe and the Caucasus region, and has been used as a medicinal herb since ancient Greece, where Dioscorides described it in his 1st century herbal as a treatment for fevers, inflammation, and headaches. It was widely grown in medieval European monastery gardens as a key medicinal plant, and arrived in North America with early colonial settlers who planted it in dooryard gardens as a household remedy. By the 17th century, the royal botanist John Parkinson described it as one of the most useful plants a gardener could grow for what he called megrim, the historical name for migraine. Research published in The Lancet confirmed in the 1980s that regular consumption of fresh feverfew leaves significantly reduces the frequency and severity of migraines, a finding supported by multiple clinical trials that identified parthenolide, the primary active compound, as the mechanism of action. The plant's anti-inflammatory and serotonin-inhibiting effects are well documented in pharmacological literature. This is not folk medicine. This is clinically supported. Plant feverfew in full sun to part shade in well-drained average soil in USDA zones 5 through 9. June planting allows plants to establish and bloom their first season, dropping seeds by late summer for the following year. Pull excess seedlings in early spring to prevent overcrowding, and do take advantage of the harvest. The strongly aromatic foliage also deters deer and rabbits, making feverfew particularly useful along garden borders and areas with heavy wildlife pressure. Plant 8 Larkspur Consolida agacis. Larkspur tall, elegant, and one of the great cool season self-seeders. Those dramatic spikes of blue, purple, pink, and white flowers in late spring and early summer are something garden designers pay good money to recreate with arrangements. But in your garden, Larkspur does it for free. It blooms, drops its seeds, dies back in summer heat. And then, as if by clockwork, returns each autumn with new seedlings that overwinter as small rosettes and bloom again the following spring. Once the cycle is established, it runs itself indefinitely. Consolida agacis is native to the Mediterranean region and Western Asia. Dried larkspur flowers have been discovered in ancient Egyptian funeral garlands found in tombs dating back to 1000 BCE, making this one of the oldest ornamental plants in recorded history. In Renaissance Europe, larkspur seeds were ground and applied as a treatment for lice and parasites, documented in herbal manuals from the 16th and 17th centuries. It was among the very first flowers grown in colonial American gardens, appearing in seed lists and estate garden inventories from Virginia and New England from the early 1700s onward. Research has confirmed that larkspur seeds require cold stratification to germinate reliably, which is precisely why autumn sowing and natural self-seeding work so well. The seeds experience the cold they need right where they fall. One important note, larkspur seeds contain alkaloids that are toxic to cattle and should be kept away from grazing animals, though they are completely safe for ornamental garden use. Plant larkspur by surface scattering seeds in full sun and well-drained average soil in USDA zones 2 through 11. The real cycle establishes when June-planted parent plants drop seeds in summer. Those seeds germinate in autumn, overwinter as rosettes, and bloom beautifully the following spring. Thin seedlings to 9 to 12 inches apart for best flower production. Do not try to transplant larkspur, it deeply resents root disturbance. Direct sow wherever you want it to grow and leave it there. Plant 9 Hollyhock Alsia rosea. Hollyhock, the quintessential cottage garden statement plant. Nothing says classic garden quite like hollyhock standing tall against a wall or fence. Those large, silky flowers stacked one above the other along 4 to 6 foot stems in shades from pure white to the deepest burgundy and near black attract hummingbirds and create a sense of permanent established abundance that takes years to achieve with most plants. With hollyhocks you get there faster, and once you do they sustain themselves. Hollyhocks are native to Central Asia and the Eastern Mediterranean, and have been cultivated in Western gardens for at least 500 years. They reached England by the 16th century and became a defining feature of English cottage gardens, appearing in paintings by Constable and Monet. Early American settlers brought hollyhocks to the New World as both a garden plant and a medicinal herb, using the mucilaginous roots and flowers as a soothing treatment for sore throats and digestive complaints. Research has documented that hollyhock flowers contain mucilaginous polysaccharides with genuinely soothing anti-inflammatory effects on mucous membranes, confirming centuries of traditional medicinal use. Studies have also confirmed that hollyhock seeds germinate reliably when surface scattered in autumn or early spring with good soil contact, exactly what happens when the plant self-seeds. Plant hollyhocks in full sun in well-drained average soil in USDA zones 3 through 9. June is the classic planting time. Young plants produce sturdy first-year rosettes that overwinter and bloom spectacularly the following summer. Allow seed stalks to dry completely and shatter naturally before removing them, typically from late August through September. Seeds fall close to the base of the parent plant. Grow in full sun with good air circulation to reduce hollyhock rust, primarily a cosmetic issue that does not prevent the plant from flowering and reseeding successfully. Plant 10 Purple Coneflower Echinacea purpurea. Purple coneflower, one of the most recognized and most useful self-seeders in American gardens. Those large rosy purple flowers with their spiky orange central cones bloom from midsummer through autumn. Monarch butterflies, painted ladies, and goldfinches seek them out. And when the flowers fade, the seed heads stand through winter, feeding birds and naturally stratifying next year's seeds right where they stand. Come spring, new seedlings emerge around the parent plants and the colony grows, year after year. Echinacea purpurea is native to the central United States from Iowa and Illinois south through Kansas and Oklahoma. Native American tribes including the Lakota, Cheyenne, and Comanche used it more than almost any other medicinal plant on the continent, applying it to wounds, toothaches, sore throats, and infections in traditions stretching back centuries before European contact. European settlers quickly adopted it, and by the late 19th century it had become one of the most widely sold botanical medicines in the United States. The discovery of its immunological effects in the 20th century transformed it into one of the best-selling herbal supplements in the world. Research published in the Lancet Infectious Diseases confirmed that echinacea extracts reduce the duration of the common cold. Studies at the University of Cologne documented a 35% reduction in cold incidence in clinical trials. The flowers are also documented as critical habitat supporting monarchs, painted ladies, and over 40 native bee species. Plant purple coneflower in full sun and well-drained average soil in USDA zones 3 through 9. June transplanting gives the plants a full season to establish and begin self-seeding their first autumn. Leave seed heads standing through winter, goldfinches depend on them through the coldest months and the seeds naturally stratify in place. New seedlings appear within 18 inches of parent plants and can be moved in early spring while still small. A coneflower patch once established expands steadily with zero replanting. Plant 11, Foxglove digitalis purpurea. Foxglove, dramatic, towering, and one of the most powerful self-seeders on this entire list. 4 to 6 foot spikes covered in tubular spotted flowers in purple, pink, white, and cream. They bloom in early summer, stop traffic in any garden they grow in, and then drop thousands of tiny seeds that guarantee their return next year and every year after. Technically a biennial, growing foliage the first year, blooming the second, but because it self-seeds so abundantly, you always have plants at every stage. The effect is perennial. Foxglove is native to Western Europe, growing wild on rocky hillsides, forest edges, and disturbed ground across Britain, Ireland, France, and the Iberian Peninsula. It has been used medicinally in European folk tradition for centuries, but its defining moment in history came in 1785, when English physician William Withering published his landmark treatise documenting the use of digitalis extracted from foxglove leaves to treat heart failure and edema. That discovery founded modern cardiac medicine. Digitalis glycosides derived from foxglove are still in clinical use today for atrial fibrillation and congestive heart failure, a garden flower that changed medicine forever. Research has confirmed that foxglove contains digitoxin and digoxin compounds that increase the force of heart contractions and slow the heart rate, with clinical applications documented for over 2 centuries. Studies have also documented that foxglove flowers are essential habitat for bumblebees. Their body length is perfectly matched to the interior of the tubular flowers for efficient pollination. Plant foxglove in part shade to full sun in moist, well-drained, humus-rich soil in USDA zones 4 through 9. June is the ideal time to plant young seedlings. They produce first-year rosettes that overwinter and bloom the following summer, establishing the self-seeding cycle from year 2 onward. Allow seed spikes to mature and shatter naturally. The seeds are extremely tiny and germinate best with direct contact on bare soil. Do not bury them. Let them fall where they fall. Plant 12, Valeriana officinalis. Valerian, tall, sweetly fragrant, and one of the most historically significant medicinal self-seeders you can grow. Those large clusters of tiny white to pale pink flowers on 4 to 5 foot stems fill the summer garden with a delicate honey-like fragrance that attracts butterflies and beneficial insects throughout the season. The plant self-seeds readily once established, and once you have it in the right spot, one with some moisture and decent soil, it will return and expand for years without any attention. Valeriana officinalis is native to Europe and parts of Asia and has been cultivated as a medicinal plant since ancient Greece and Rome. Hippocrates described it as a treatment for insomnia. Galen recommended it specifically for sleep disorders in the 2nd century CE, during World War II. Valerian was widely used in England to calm the nerves of civilians living under air raids. British pharmacies reported dramatically increased demand throughout the Blitz. Early American settlers brought valerian seeds to New England, where it naturalized readily in moist areas. Research published in the American Journal of Medicine confirmed that valerian root extract significantly reduces sleep latency and improves sleep quality in clinical trials. The active compounds, including valerianic acid and isovaleric acid, interact with GABA receptors in the brain, producing a calming effect analogous to mild sedatives without the dependency risk associated with pharmaceutical options. Plant valerian in full sun to part shade in moist, well-drained soil in USDA zones 4 through 9. June planting gives the plants time to establish and produce their first season's flowers and seeds by late summer. Thin seedlings to 18 to 24 inches apart to prevent overcrowding. The flowers attract lacewings and parasitic wasps, genuinely useful allies in any garden. One important note, the scent of valerian roots is powerfully attractive to cats. Worth bearing in mind if your garden gets regular feline visitors. Plant 13, Verbena bonariensis. And we are finishing with one of the most elegant and versatile plants on this entire list, Verbena bonariensis. Pencil-thin stems rising to 5 or 6 feet, topped with tiny clusters of rich purple flowers from midsummer through the first frost. Airy, architectural, completely see-through so you can plant it in front of other plants without blocking anything. Butterflies find it almost irresistible. And it self-seeds with extraordinary generosity, scattering thousands of seeds that sprout into new plants and fill gaps across the entire garden each season, as if they were placed there deliberately. Verbena bonariensis is native to the grasslands of South America, particularly Argentina and Brazil, growing naturally along roadsides and in open, disturbed areas. It was introduced to European and American gardens in the early 20th century and rapidly became a favorite of garden designers because of that unique see-through quality. British garden designer Piet Oudolf made it a cornerstone of the prairie planting style that transformed garden design across the 1990s and 2000s. When you see it in a garden, you immediately understand why. Research from pollinator monitoring studies in the United Kingdom confirmed that Verbena bonariensis is one of the top 3 plants for butterfly attraction in temperate gardens, with painted ladies, red admirals and cabbage whites visiting in documented numbers exceeding virtually any other common garden plant in side-by-side comparisons. For butterflies alone, this plant earns its place on this list. Plant Verbena bonariensis in full sun in well-drained average soil. In USDA zones 7 through 11 it grows as a short-lived perennial returning from light root systems. In zones 5 and 6, treat it as a self-seeding annual that returns reliably from dropped seeds each spring. Do not deadhead. Allow the wiry seed heads to stand through winter, they catch frost beautifully and release seeds gradually over an extended period. One final note, the seedlings are tiny and grass-like when they first emerge. Mark their locations in autumn so you do not accidentally weed them out in spring. And that is all 13. 13 plants that ask very little of you and give you back a garden that gets fuller, richer, and more beautiful every single year. The black-eyed Susan and the coneflower building native habitat. The foxglove and valerian carrying centuries of medicinal history. The lupins improving your soil while they dazzle everyone who walks past. The Verbena bonariensis and the viola filling every gap as if a skilled designer planned it all. The most productive garden is often the one you learn to get out of the way of. If this video helped you, please hit the like button right now. It takes 1 second and it genuinely helps more gardeners find Plantage. And if you are not subscribed yet, now is the time. We publish every single week a practical, in-depth gardening content that helps you grow smarter with every season. Drop a comment below and tell me which of these 13 are you planting first this June. I read every comment and I would genuinely love to know. Until next time, keep growing. This is Plantage.